Okay, awesome. Perfect. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Fluent Talks. Go ahead and share my screen here. We got a pretty fun agenda here. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Fluent Talks. And so for those who are joining us for the first time, we're going to be chatting about what is coming in the Fluent community, what's going on, questions users have, just any discussions that are useful in that scenario. So today we got a couple of news updates. So things that we've done in the past week that are coming out. We're going to do some first mile observability and then talk a little bit about DevTools. News updates. So things that getting an echo. 1 second. Okay, I think we're in the clear there. Okay, perfect. All right, let's talk a bit about first mile observability. So, for us as Calyptia, we really talk a little bit about first mile observability all the time, and what that is. And I think it's important to just kind of explain, hey, what are we thinking about here? What does it mean? How is it useful? What problems does it actually solve? Why do we call it first mile versus just generic observability? How does it fit with the observability journey that we see in total? But before we jump into that, let's start with some news updates. So we just announced the Fluent plugin for OpenSearch. So that was announced yesterday. Again, we announced a big, broader partnership with OpenSearch. This is really the first step there. Have some plugins. We're already seeing a bunch of folks use the Ruby gem, which is great. About 7,000 Ruby gem downloads, which is awesome. So keep sending us feedback. We had a PR merge from the community in that too, which was great. I've gotten some user reports saying, hey, this thing is working well, or hey, we're able to now use OpenSearch, which we hadn't been able to before with Fluent. So all really good positive feedback. Keep it coming. Also bring the negative feedback. We're open to making sure we keep building and delivering the right stuff instead of just anything. So yeah, you can go there to the OpenSearch blog, get a quick getting started. It's like a 2 to 3 minute article read, really quick to just showcase some of the use cases that we typically see. How do you get started? How do you download it? 2 ways there, one gem install and the other is the Calyptia Fluent package. Okay, and then some other exciting news that came out was the CNCF survey. So I don't know if folks read that every year. I love to. It's a great way to see what's going on with the industry as a whole. How are folks thinking about infrastructure, IT? What priorities do they have? And I think one of the really cool stats in there was just the adoption of cloud native projects year over year. And so within Fluent specifically, that was about 53% year over year. That's a pretty remarkable stat, which is great. And I think the other part there that's really interesting to see is when you're looking at Fluent, there's also a lot of Fluent Bit out there too, and we're seeing Fluent Bit just continue to have a ton of momentum. So having folks that are using more and more Fluent and have Fluent Bit, I think observability is definitely really key. So definitely recommend checking out the full annual survey. I think there's a ton of goodies there, and especially for folks who are trying to figure out, hey, what tools should we use, or what's the cloud native way. This survey isn't going to give you the exact answers, but at least it will showcase this is what a lot of folks are doing. So it's a nice way to do that. And then part of that was some surveys from other folks. I like the New Relic survey a lot. And one of the big stats that I saw there that was interesting was observability becoming a critical daily data-driven practice. So that be becoming really, really critical in any business. I think I heard a quote once that I like to share is like all businesses are becoming software businesses. And as any company transitions to a software business, you have to make sure that software works, it's reliable, it's available. And how do you do that? Observability as the practice that can make sure that everything is up and running. So another really kind of cool survey there. So if other folks have surveys that are useful and things that they found interesting, would love to have you share. Would love to talk about it more here. Okay, so let's jump into first mile observability. And I think the first question that comes to mind all the time is, what is first mile observability? And really, I like to think of observability in a couple of different ways. Instead of it just being a series of data types, which I think is what it really has gotten to, is you got logs, you got metrics, you got traces. And yeah, that's great. I think it's awesome to have these different data types, but I like to think of observability as a long journey. This is something where you as an organization or you as a person are trying to figure out, how can I make sure that my application is performing the critical business functions that it's supposed to be doing. And so for that, I like to think of it in this journey, you have to do a number of things. So say from a developer side, you have to understand what you want to look at. What do you want to understand? How do I go out and actually get this data? Where does this data exist? What data do I even have? And that first part is really the collection. How do I collect that data? How do I retrieve it? How do I bring it into a place where I can then get it to some maybe more back-end analytical tools? So I have these questions. Are my services running? Are they flowing properly? Are they performing exactly what they're supposed to? And as you try to answer these questions, you then have to go collect that data. Now, after you collect it, there's a other series of pieces there. One is, can I store that data? Can I retrieve that data? Is there a way to enrich that data? Make answering these questions easier? Do I have to grab certain information from one side and merge it with information that might exist somewhere else? A good example of that is, hey, if I'm running in Kubernetes and I want to see if an application in Kubernetes is running properly, or is performing properly, I want to know which application I might have, because in today's modern infrastructure, I might have 50 versions of that application running in Kubernetes. So instead of just saying, hey, this is the application, here's what it's outputting, we want to say, this is the application, this is the pod, this is the node, this is the server, this is the availability zone, this is the cloud, all that series of information enriching in, like, say, the Kubernetes filter, and then pushed into your backend analytics system. So now your alert gives you faster context, so you can debug and understand what happened, where it happened, how it happened. And that first part of this journey is really where first mile is. And that's where you're analyzing the data, you're monitoring it, it's where it's created and collected. And what we find is, like, as folks are always doing this observability journey, they really focus on the backend piece. Let me collect the data, send it somewhere centralized, and do all my immediate insights. And I think that's great. That works really well. However, I would say there are some situations where there are trade-offs. Number one, you have to wait for all the data to arrive in a central location. Two is you're also paying to ship all that data out. And that might not mean so much in, say, a private data center, but as we move to more cloud environments, you kind of get hit with these egress charges. And I don't know if folks have looked at the most recent egress charges from cloud providers, but they can be pretty substantial. It's like 9 cents a gig if you're shipping over public internet. So instead of just shipping all this data, which might not be useful, why not just look at it ahead of time and get rid of it? Maybe archive it into something that's not going to cost you 9 cents per gig. And this is where the ability to perform first mile observability is really useful. And I think that we've tried to bring up this term multiple times, but there's also, this already probably exists if you're using observability tools, right? You might be using a vendor provided agent. You might be using, say you're using Datadog or Splunk. They have great agents, Datadog agent, Splunk Forwarder, If you're using Elastic, maybe you're using Beats, Logstash. These are all ways that you can collect that data today. The unfortunate part, though, is those are vendor locked, right? They are really only catered. You can't take a Datadog agent and route it to Elasticsearch or Splunk. And likewise, you can't take Beats and then send that data over to Splunk either. So you're kind of stuck with that full end-to-end tool chain. And I think the growing thing that we see as well is the backends continually change. You might have Splunk, you might have S3, you might have Kafka, and there's a need to ship this data that's collected once into many locations. And so the first mile and owning the first mile really allows you to do that at a much higher scale, be vendor agnostic. As more and more backends arrive, right? There's ClickHouses now growing, and you've got Snowflake as a great place to store data. Maybe data, I don't know, what's it? Databricks has the lake house. It's just going to keep growing, right? It's not like next year there'll be less backends. You want to be able to have something that's flexible and can meet that need. And so, yeah, I think this is how we think about first mile observability. And really on top of that, just trying to prove out like, hey, this is something that people are already doing, right? We just reached a billion Fluent Bit deployments over Docker Hub. So that was very, very exciting. And we've reached about 30,000 GitHub stars across the entire Fluent ecosystem. And we've seen folks do about multiple petabytes a day. I talked about at FluentCon KubeCon last year, about how folks were doing like 7 petabytes a day of logging, and how you can really scale that to massive quantities with what you have. And I think the other part about first mile observability that's really important here is just kind of like when you start to own first mile observability, we start to see a ton of different benefits. And besides just the ability to reduce the data, analyze the data, get immediate insights, you also have more flexibility with being able to get to those higher scales. So what do I mean by all that is, as things keep getting more distributed, as we get more cloud adoption, as we get more commoditized in storage, you want to have something that's super flexible, that's open source. You don't have to worry about licensing. You can ship it with their product. And these are other places where first mile observability comes into play. Yeah, as we mentioned, we use our open source. We also have our enterprise piece here too, which is Calyptia Enterprise for Fluent Bit. And really what this product does is make it really simple to operate this at scale. So you're deploying in Kubernetes, you might be using operators, you might be using Helm charts, fantastic. But how do you get some of the niceties, I would say, of Kubernetes without having to fully understand every single piece? So instead of having to understand how a deployment works and having to mount a service to it and get the load balancer situated, which is a great way to do all of this, we can just kind of automate all that for you. So you can kind of take your single operations and really scale that. So you can provide logging as a service to multiple teams or whatnot. So that's a bit about first mile observability, what it is, why we say it, how we think it's important going forward, what we're investing in. And I think the next piece that we're going to be talking about in the Fluent Talk, which I'm really, really excited for, is a little bit of the dev tools. And so again, I don't just think that first mile observability is the journey where you start with just the collection, but also where you as a developer or you as a practitioner in this field, you want to be able to build these pipelines. You want to be able to test them. You want to be able to figure all of these things out. I actually have Gago here, who heads our developer experience at Calyptia, to kind of talk me through some of the dev tools and specifically the Fluent Linter. So let me hand it off to you, Gago. Talk a little bit about this.
Yep. It's interesting that the space is becoming so popular, but at the same time is so populated with tools and mechanisms and systems that to really accomplish what you're looking for, without losing the freshness of keep going, becomes a tool, you have to be an expert on everything.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the space where we are navigating right now. At Calyptia, we are trying to say, all right, what is the backpack that you have to carry on in order to get to where you're going? And DevTools becomes just a cornerstone of this practice. Like, how do we simplify so you don't have to be an expert on every detail of everything that you have to do to accomplish the processing of data and at such high volumes. Yeah. So we started looking at how can we supply something that will be useful for everyone. And the first thing that we thought about, and it was automatic, was Fluent bit configurations. Could be, we have more than 80 plugins. You as an individual learning and knowing all the nitty gritty to get to where you're going on the plugins, and it's only going to keep growing. It's going to be really unattainable. It's going to be really hard. So we thought, all right, why don't we build a tool that helps everybody do that? So we started playing with it a couple of weeks ago, and we have something that we want to show everyone that might catch the stream, and just try to socialize this idea of these tools that we deserve them. It's a great piece of tool. We deserve to be accompanied by tooling around it that allow us to use it better. So let me see if I can share a little bit of this. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Yep, all good.
Can you see the presentation there?
I can.
All right. So you were, if anyone was guessing this, you can see Fluent Linter action by Calyptia. This is pretty much what it reads, and it's in the market already. We're gonna release it in a couple of weeks, but for now, we would like to just show you what is the experience right now. Sorry, I'm getting some weird signs there. So before we start, hello, I'm Gago. I work at developer experience at Calyptia, and you can find me on Twitter and GitHub, the same user, Gago AR. So first of all, why I'm even talking to you about this? What is a GitHub action? Why do we need this thing that I'm talking about? And how do we use it? I think that every time that someone tells me about new tooling, I just wonder the same thing. What is this thing and why do I want it?
Yeah. Hey, Gago, I think we're stuck on the Fluent Linter action by Calyptia page. Maybe?
Let me see. Maybe we have a problem. Let me see if you can see. Can you see that?
Yeah, perfect.
There you go. There you go. I have like 50 windows showing me.
Yeah, we don't want to miss those GIFs.
I mean, we work so hard on it. So, like I was saying, it's a linter. It's an action. It's in GitHub. And the first thing when people talk to me about things is like, why do I care? Why again a new thing? So hopefully we can test that out and we can show you why this is interesting. And we're really excited to use it because we use it internally. So what is a GitHub action? Just to begin with, right? So as many of you know, GitHub started developing this new ecosystem around GitHub, like code review and pull requests, and where you do your iterations when you develop and review. And they created an entire ecosystem about actions, and actions are units that you can run against your code and validate them. The same thing that you will do in the computer, right? So you will lint your code. You will run tests on your code. You will do some other exotic things like having preview links to deploy that in a private network and see what you have done and if it works or not. All these elements are really useful now that are fully integrated in your code. And we thought that the best way of getting this in everybody's hands is integrating the linting capability of configuration for Fluentbit within the GitHub ecosystem. It integrates right away with your repository, so just a couple of clicks and you're there. So why do you need this? This is always like, why do I need this thing? So important thing is, like we said, validations are really hard on a configuration that has more than 80 plugins. You have outputs, inputs, filters, and who knows what is in store for us in the future with Fluentbit. It's growing like crazy. So we want to be ahead of the way here and say, how do we provide something that is going to simplify your configuration? How do you configure something? So we created this linter. We have a couple of use cases that if you're someone that works with Fluentbit, you are gonna remember, and it's going to hurt somewhere because you had it before. And these are kind of the things that you are going to be able to enjoy when you use the linter. So, and you, Anurag, tell me you are an avid user of Fluent Bit. So probably this have been in you in the past. So let's see which one strikes gold here. So what about using the ROM properties in a section? So something simple. Let's see this simple nugget here. You have an input and you give it a name, and right away you say this is not a real value. We're being obvious here so everybody can tell, but this is literally a property that, of course, it will make everything blow into pieces, right?
Yeah.
So this is, so just to put everybody on the same page, this is what Fluent Bit will do for you if you pipe this configuration through Fluent Bit. And it will just tell you, you can see one that says error is the first error that you find in the after the infos. And it's the error config dummy unknown configuration property. This is not real. If you have a bigger configuration, if this were, instead of the one that we saw here, something that has 300 lines of configurations because you are doing real stuff with it, you're gonna find out that this is really hard to parse visually, and you're gonna have to call that person that knows every possible thing about the logs in Fluent Bit to just even get there. So this is not ideal, right? So what about this? What happens if you just do PR here and we just show you, hey, this is what's going on, just right away, like no code read, no logs, no an expert, no anything bizarre. You just get it in your pull request. This is hopefully going to speed up a lot of our workflows when we develop on top of Fluent Bit. What about?
I was going to add, like, I think probably I've spent hours. You just like try to get a Docker container running with Fluent Bit, and it always feels like it's going to take 5 minutes to go check this. Like, oh, let me go check config. Let me run the Docker container. But for some reason, it's always like, I forgot how to do the mount file. Oh, I forgot to mount the file. Why is this working? Why is this being perfect? And just like getting the environment set up to even just do this test, that is so tedious. And I'm thinking, if I'm having a ton of trouble, like every time I want to go and do this, I'm sure folks who are using this in production are probably running into this way more. So yeah, that's
right. And also setting the infrastructure. If that infrastructure in some point fails for any reason, the expert that set up all that is someone that left the company, someone you haven't looked at it because the things that work till it doesn't. So all this knowledge is really hard to transfer sometimes. And if we encapsulate it out and we maintain it, it is just a service. And as a service, you can just do the thing that you are there to do, which is configure Fluent Bit to move a lot of data from point A to point B to whatever you want, right? Yeah. So going to the next one that the expert in house that is not today is not in the talk, but the expert in house is like first thing when we were thinking about the linter was like, you are gonna have to implement this. So that was the first thing that we implemented. And we're gonna talk about it right now. It involves the directive include. So let's look at a couple of files so we get the use case right. Let's say we have a dev, we have just this file, right? This configuration. And this configuration is doing 2 naive includes in a nested directory, which are not complicated. If you have done any sort of Fluent Bit and you wanna get cute with your configuration because you like things that are organized, you end up with some levels of nesting just to have your outputs in some place and to have your segmentation for maintainability purposes. So you end up with something really nested, and you might have something like include nested, include 1 and include 2 files. And this is, as I said, really naive. If we see the include 1 and include 2 have the same thing inside, I'm going to show you one. It has an include of a valid config file underneath. So going back, we just have one configuration, and next to it, we have a nested file that we're including that is including a third one. But Fluent Bit, when you include in the same configuration, the same file twice, like we're doing, these 2 files, include 1, include 2, are including both the valid.conf, Fluent Bit is going to complain. It doesn't let you do that. For singular dependencies and other issues. So this is what FluentBit will tell you. It will say, hey, I'm trying to open the valid file and I cannot open it. That is it. That is the actual issue that you're having. That doesn't tell you much, does it? It is a bit like, I don't really know what's going on. So what about this? What about a message that says you are trying to include this file and you can see a path, but that's the path of the action itself in GitHub. And what the rest of the message says, Fluentbit does not allow you to include the same file twice. And as you can see in the snippet that I've taken, the first file, which is include.conf, include1conf, is fine. And the second one is the one telling you, hey, you're including it twice now. So now it's in line. So you can see exactly what it is. You don't have to be chasing a mythical file that you don't remember where you put it in.
Yeah. And a lot of folks I know, when they're doing these includes, it's like a great way to break up inputs, filters, outputs. And then, especially with config management systems, you can then go say, okay, I want Ansible to manage all these 3 files. And then my top level file, the one that's actually going to get run, is just including them. But the downside is, of course, what you just kind of showed, where I don't know where something might go wrong or miss in the input filters or outputs. So this definitely helps with a lot of those scenarios. Even the actual, I forgot the Helm chart that is used by FluentBit. It actually defines 3 config areas, and then they get absorbed into a single include
Right.
when it gets deployed. So yeah, that's really useful.
It's also a limitation sometimes to grow in a controlled way, because the include is really, it's a mechanism to grow your configuration without having a ginormous file. The problem is, if you start doing too many includes, you need more intelligence in your tooling to be able to manage it. So, we have to solve one to get to the other. And this is kind of one of our point of views with the tooling. We have solved many things in the includes that gives you a lot of information. When you cannot find a file, it will tell you. So there's no, I included something relatively and I don't know where it is. We have fixed all that in the linter right now. And lastly, one that is a nugget that we found it, and it was like, we have to share it with other people, just it's an oddity, at the same time it's interesting. So here we go. Many of you might be acquainted with the directive set. Set allows you to set an environmental variable for later be used in the blocks or sections underneath, right? So you can do set of a variable, and then you will use it in any other blocks underneath, as you can see in this configuration. But this is an interesting option. If you run this particular one, that is, it's like the developer here got confused and forgot what is an assign and how to use it, because it's using it is assigning it like it were exposing it, like you see in the dummy underneath. This will, if you see what FluentBit will do, this is the output of FluentBit, and you can see the very first line of the log says variable $, curly braces A is used but not set. But wait, we had the dummy there that is exposing it. There's no way you can access the variable. It will allow you to declare it, but there's no way for you to use it. But there's no way for you to reach it. It is not a bug, because it's syntactically allowed by the configuration. It's just that you cannot reach it. So we decided that this is a food gun, like they say, and we have to prevent things to happen. So we just decided that this in the linter will be like a parsing error. It should not allow you to even try this, because it's gonna make you really sad in production. So we did that. We put the inline exactly next to it, and we say, hey, you have defined a directive that cannot be parsed. And we show you the directive that is there. And we tell you what are the support directives, and you can go to Google the directives and you can see how you do it correctly. In the future, we can expand this message to have more meat, like here's the README, here, like even give you an example of what is the form of the set or the includes or any directive that we have implemented. But as you can see, this is a food gun that with the linter is no more. This is just a little glimpse of how to use it. But we wanted to move to, if you saw that this is useful, we have much more in store for you. but let's see how you use it, because the important is like, these are the things that solves. Now you care, now you need it. So how do I use it? And here you can see, Homer, how you might feel the same like relation with this is so confusing. So let's see how. And I'm going to go fast through this. Their documentation, we have documentation. We will share this widely at the end of the podcast. If you want to just, at the end of the stream, if you want to just check on this, or in a couple of weeks when we are in a more stable version. We are iterating really fast right now with the linter. But let me show you a bit of how you do it. If you're familiar with Marketplace and actions in GitHub, this is something that you have done before. But if not, it is just going to the actual Marketplace action, and you will see this. You're going to be able to copy. These 2 lines are the ones that enabled you to create a workflow for the action to be used in your repo. So once that you do that, something that we require is Calyptia gives a lot of intelligence to the linter. So it's actually running a lot of Fluent bit in the cloud to allow you to get the most up-to-date and refined issues that you can find in your configuration directly into your pull request. And for that, you have to just visit Calyptia. You can log in with GitHub, and you can generate an API key, copy, because you need it, and you can store that as a secret in your repository. And once that you are there, you just have to create the workflow like in GitHub. This is full of documentation everywhere, so it's easy to walk you through that. But the workflow at the end looks like this. This is the entirety is only executing on pull requests. You can do it on push or whatever you want. And as you can see, it is giving you have to put the Calyptia API that if you save it as a secret in your repo, you will have it there. And you have to point out to the configuration that you are having. This is a glob, so you can point out to many entries of configuration, or just by commas. It's a glob, so you can just do what you will do normally in a glob. And once that you have that, you have it. It is running. And with that, I just want to thank you. And if you have any questions, happy to answer that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, this is great. So folks can go get the GitHub action today in Marketplace if you want to try it out. Note the alpha tag next to it. It's continually being evolved. But yeah, it should help, and especially we see this trend where folks are going more and more into things like GitOps, and everything is tracked, so you can understand, hey, who made this change? Why did we make this change? And Git's a great place to do that, and then have that go and push this type of configuration down to your pipelines, into say your Helm charts or whatnot. And so these things can really help speed up that process, right? So you can say, hey, why did you push this live if it was failing the linter, versus you push it live, you wait, you see the production issue, and you come back and like, here's the issue in the config. So just another way to kind of help out as you move, right? So this is exciting, I think, and I feel like as we look at first mile observability, we can help practitioners with these type of dev tools. That's going to be really awesome for everybody. Okay. Well, folks, yeah, that's a majority of what we had to cover today. So I think we can depart a little early on Friday afternoon. Yeah, we talked a little bit about first mile observability, what it is, some of the GitHub actions, dev tools. Next week, I think we have a couple of fun topics already lined up with Kafka and OpenTelemetry. So we'll run into those, but otherwise, folks, have a great Friday. You can reach us on Slack. You can reach us over here, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.